I wonder what it's in for. Well, if you guessed 911 video, you guessed right. We got a Mustang today, and this is a sad story. Story of disappointment, failure, and impatience. I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, what? Let's take a look in the trunk real quick. Follow me. So over here in the corner of the trunk, you see this guy right here, and you think, wait a minute, those are some 5-star logoed heat shrinks. Those guys. And you'd be like, hey a minute, he just said it was a 911 video, and that's a 5-star install. How could a 911 video and something that we've already worked on be what? Doesn't make sense. And you'd be right, it doesn't make sense to us either. Here's the backstory, because everyone loves a backstory. Owner of said Mustang comes in on a Saturday and says, hey man, you guys did my girl's car, I want you to do my car. And we're like, you bet bro, what you need? He goes, I need some subs, I need some bang in my trunk, I need an amp. No problem man, put an amp in, put some subs in, rock on. Comes back a couple months later, and he's like, hey man, I need to finish off my system. This is all unbeknownst to us, because we're just installers. Paul quotes him on a price. Price is good. When can you do it? Can you do it right now? No, we can't. We have a schedule out. You know, it's gonna be a little bit. Oh, bro, can't wait. Can't wait. Gotta have it now. Now. What he does is he takes it to another shop, and believe it or not, it's the same shop from the previous 911 video. We'll just call him Hurry and Cash. Cash and Hurry. Goes there, has it put in, comes back here a couple weeks ago, and he says, hey man, I need a second battery. This little guy here is just killing it. No problem. Look at it and go, man, you know, we can move that amp forward. I can tuck a battery behind there and make a cool little battery box. Look slick as heck. Take about an hour, hour and a half. You're all good. He's like, cool. Here's where the fun comes in. Shows up at about 3:30 when the appointment was, because we figured it's just a 2-hour job, no big deal. We'll have him out by the time we close. We pop the hood, we see a 0 gauge, and we're like, wait a minute. 4 gauge in the back and there's a 0 gauge underneath the hood. Why is there a 0 gauge? Start exploring a little bit, and we're like, hey, hold on. This guy has some new speakers in the car. That's right, these are the crossovers for the rear deck speakers. Here's both of them. Neat, huh? Fold down the back seat and we're like, holy crap, there's a whole nother amplifier. And hey look, put some Tessa tape on it, because this is the ground. I guess that means that this one is black. Here's our wiring, and I'm gonna use some shitty butt connectors, cool there. And then we pull up the seat, and we see this is our 0 gauge to 4 gauge distribution up underneath the seat. And as you can see, the RCA is just zip tied to it, and this thing is pulled tight. So this is like getting super stretched from the seat here. And then we follow this wire here, and it goes up through here, up behind here, loops back down around here. And then here's your ground. They used this. Really? Okay. Hey, they sanded it though. We got our speed wire here, and
6 feet of RCAs right there.
There's a tunnel right here that this is actually supposed to run through, but okay. At this point, we're like, holy cow, this isn't just a battery install. There's a ton of stuff going on here. I mean, what? Grab the customer and we bring him out to his car and we say, hey man, what happened? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, there's a ton of extra stuff in your car that we didn't put in. He's like, oh man. So he tells me the story about, you know, can't wait, go to other shop, get the stuff done. How he's been back a bunch of times. And I'm like, that's great, but we can't put a battery in, because really? Your distribution block's there, just taped up, hoping to God that tape never comes off? That's awesome. We scheduled an appointment for 2 weeks later, so at some point he's gonna have to wait, and now he had to wait. Hey, listen man, we need to redo this. And he's like, yeah, I'm down for that, let's do it. I'm like, it's 3 o'clock. This is an all-day job. You know, that time you didn't want to wait to have us do the full install? Well, today's the day. You're gonna have to wait. 2 weeks have passed. He's back in today. We're gonna strip this car. We're gonna pull out the speakers. We're gonna pull out the rear deck. We're gonna pull out all this power wire. We're gonna run a new 0 gauge. We're gonna mount the amplifiers. We're gonna take our amp out. We're gonna mount it someplace else. We're gonna move that amplifier off the seat where the wires are all just getting raked and pinched and, oh, Jesus. We have no idea what the speakers look like in the door. We can only assume by looking at the rear speakers they can't be pretty. My guess is there's probably some crossovers laying around somewhere. I don't know, we're gonna have to find those. He does have a new deck in using the Metro dash kit, which is cool. Let's get started. First thing we want to do is pop the hood and disconnect the fuse underneath the hood, because you don't want to deal with a live 0 gauge through a car. Ford now conveniently hides the battery. There's these little twisty guys here that you just kind of twist and pull up and they come out. Fuse holder is mounted, which is good. I don't know what they did with our mount. At least it's mounted. We don't have a 0 gauge flopping around underneath the hood. And it does look like there's an extra 1.5 feet of wire down. I don't know, what is going on? There's a lot of extra zero gauge in here. We might not actually have to run a new zero gauge. This one might actually be long enough once we get this disconnected and figure out where they ran it to. That'd be cool. Now the other thing you have to be real careful about on these Fords is a lot of the times these things are anodized, which means they're a real crappy contact for what you're trying to do here. Sometimes you have to sand these surfaces so that they make better contact. The thickness of the fuse holder is only about maybe a little more than 1/8 of an inch, and the metal is right behind it, but you use a 1-inch self-tapper. Oh, I got it. So they twisted the fuse holder in there, so instead of having it run the right direction. Okay, that makes sense. This is what I pulled out of that battery box for wire. That's a lot of wire. We just got the rear speakers out. Check this out. They just hacked up the factory speaker and mounted this nice JLC3 in it. Screw that missed. Screw. This one they got all 4 screws screwed into something. This one they just kind of got close on this one, I guess. Totally destroyed the factory speakers to put these in. I mean, these adapters are only like 15 bucks. Now if this guy ever wants to trade this car back in, he's got to buy either some new speakers or find some factory ones to put back, you know what I mean? They're 15 bucks. 15 bucks ruin the speaker. The side of the car here, this is the bass knob. We ran it through the factory track. This is the RCA they ran back for the sub amp. They just tucked it in. Fernando just called me. He just got the driver's front door off and wants me to take a look at it, which means he wants you guys to take a look at it. We found the crossover. They're over here. The other one was here in the dash somewhere. You can work on them outside of the car. There's enough room to wire them up over here and then just tuck it back in. I'm pretty sure this is what he wanted to call me in about. What the heck is this? This is water damage, and it's actually wet because we had a huge rainstorm last night. I mean, it rains in Florida. This is just 1/4-inch hardboard. I don't even know what shape this is. Like, I'm thinking they just kept notching it on the table saw until they found something that would fit, and then they mounted the speaker in the door. The random hole in the door, they just ran the speaker wire through it. Now people ask, why do we take the whole car apart? And the answer is simple, because you don't know what's behind the panel. You, the consumer, don't know what's behind the panel, and we sure as heck don't. To assume like, oh yeah, the speaker's playing, it's good. The speaker was playing. By the end of summer, this will pretty much fallen out of the door, because last night was really the first rain we've gotten for the season, and the season it rains every day. That's why we use plastic. Fernando just called me over. This is the front door that we showed you earlier. There is the factory bracket, foamed, soldered, taped, quick disconnects. Good job, buddy. We have everything out of the car. The only door we didn't take off is the passenger door yet. We just wanted to get an idea of what's going on with this one. I just got the radio out, got the harness out, it's sitting on the dash. So you're putting an aftermarket radio in, you cut the factory harness. How do you cut the factory harness when you put an aftermarket radio in and you have a harness that plugs in the other side of this? Are you kidding me? That's insane. Right now, I want to get the harness straightened back up and ready to go. We're gonna run new speaker wires in this, so I'm not real worried about any of that stuff behind the deck. I want to get the harnesses plugged back in because it's the push to start and all that stuff around this control panel, and I don't want it sitting out all day. First thing is gonna be to get that going. We're gonna run a new 0 gauge because that one ended up being just a little too short. Actually turned a lot too short. We're gonna mount everything here inside of this. We're gonna put our crossovers, our 4-channel amp, our monoblock, and our battery that we're adding inside of this guy right here because he doesn't actually have a tire that goes in there, so we'll also mount in that air thing. Hopefully he'll be able to get to it now. Fernando has the speaker bezels. It's the Metra 825605. That's where we're at right now. We have an idea of what we're dealing with and rebuild this thing and get it back to where it needs to be. This is the equipment we have. We have the 4-channel, we have the monoblock, we have the battery, and then we have the 4 crossovers, and we have the tire pressure guy here, the tire pump. What we need to do is come up with a way to have access to most of it, but specifically have access to this. So this looks like it's going to be the winning function here is really what is key. We're going to cut the floor thing here so that it'll lift up. That way he'll have access to the battery if we need to get to it. We'll be able to adjust any of the gains or crossovers, and also he'll be able to get to his tire pressure. We're going to move the crossovers back here. They don't necessarily need to go under this. I feel it might be a little easier. Problem is the way the wiring is going to need to be run. It's going to have to come back in order to go forward. We can't just run it straight up the sides here because there is no way to do that, meaning the floor is made to be flat. All the wiring is going to have to come this way, over, around, and back forward. We're also going to have to put some risers in it to actually hold the floor. All right, let's go cut some plastic. hold that in place. We're gonna put a couple legs on it and also cut the holes for the things to sink into the floor. Now that we have that back brace in there that's nice and secure, we want to repeat this same thing we just did here and do it for the battery. The only difference is on the battery, we're gonna put a bottom on it because we don't want the battery to sit this low on the floor. It doesn't need to. We just need it to go in and have about an inch. That way it'll lock this battery in place, and then we can put a strip over the top to hold it to the actual mount. We have our battery in place, added 3 layers a 1/2 inch so that half the battery is locked into place there. We have the bolt in, we have our back piece here. The only thing we need to do is put a couple braces here in these corners so that this doesn't rock. And then we need to figure out how high our center brace needs to be to hold the factory cover in. This is about 4.5 inches up. So this is what we went ahead and built. We put a channel here because we're gonna need to pass wires between the two, maybe. So this is gonna sit just like this. Just finished wiring up the amplifiers. Let's take a look. Battery, tire kit, mono block, 4 crossovers, and the JL amplifier. All the wires are here. This is actually the back of the car, so the wires are gonna wrap around and go this way, and they're all taped up to match the factory wiring harness. Every inch of this is all set and ready to go into the car. let's look at the car. The wires on the passenger side of the car are being run right now. As we said, part of the problem is, like, these are just chilling here. They're not actually attached. Part of the problem with this is that we can't run the wires up and forward because once you set the box down, it would crush the wires. We don't want that to happen, so we're running the wires around the back. The passenger side is getting zip tied up right now, and the driver's side is right here, which I'm gonna hop on here in a second. Let's go into the car here. Ow! So as we talked about yesterday, we ran new speaker wires up to these speakers. The speakers are in the rear deck. We have those wires there that we're gonna plug into. Those go right there and there. And then Fernando just finished adding in our 0 gauge fuse holder. It runs along this side. That's what he's getting all taped up and connected on right here. And then of course we'll run and do the same thing on this side. Then we can get the back deck in. Right now there's parts for this car, you know, we want to get some of them back in so we feel like we got something done. In the driver's front, we did the same thing. We have, this is the mid-base wire here. This is the new tweeter wire. So in the back of the car, we wanted to use this factory ground point here, which matches this factory ground point here. The funny thing is this was a non-threaded screw. Everything there that we needed, but there was no threading in it. So we had to use our tap die set here, put threads on it so that we could put, you know, a bolt in there. It was kind of funny. I don't, yeah, weird. Just finished running the wires down his side, and I just finished running the wires down my side. Let me show you how they look. So as you can see, the factory wiring is all taped up, and other than the 0 gauge, which we put in braided loom, our wire is taped up just like theirs. And along this side, it's exactly the same. And then just like we were talking about at the beginning of the video, hold this apart and ran our wires through that, and then zip tied them all up in place. Now they're in the dash. At this point, we're gonna reassemble the car. We wanna get the rear deck in, we wanna get the side panels in, seat, running boards, and last, we'll sit in the front and put the radio back in.
To remove the door panel, you have 2 screws in this panel. One behind this handle and one behind the switch of the window. For that, you want to use your pry tool, plastic, and carefully pry it up. Unplug the switch. That's a 10mm. And now from the top handle, you want to use an angle pigtail, and that's another 10mm. Then from there, you grab your panel tool. You have 2 switches, you plug it. This is funny because this shape looks like a Toyota or like a Honda. I don't know, Chevy, something like that. But this one doesn't look like nothing. We're gonna pull it out and put the right ones. And we have water.
let's look at the battery, because Fernando just got done wiring that up. And he put the cover back on, so talk to me.
That's it,
It's done?
You're
Magic.
not gonna see it. We have a mount over here.
We mounted it instead of using 1-inch self-tappers through the side.
Yeah.
The wire pretzel's all gone. It just comes out of here, loops down, and attaches. This is all done.
Can you see?
One of the things we want to do is make it so he can lift it up, get to the tire pressure thing. We have the back cover here. It's made out of plastic. That's why we put that brace in there. Fernando's come up with a plan that he thinks might work. What we've done is we've put a groove down the center here, and this line, we want to try to bend it at this line. Now how we're going to bend it is over here we have a plastic heat strip. This guy right here I've had for about 20 years now. We're going to set it on top of there, and then hopefully we can get the plastic, just the plastic, hot enough we can bend it and tighten that area up there and make like a hinge, like they do in a lot of cars now, where you have that dual plastic and there's carpet over the top and it's like a factory hinge. That's the plan. Got my fingers crossed. Let's give it a try. Otherwise, we're just gonna cut it, which I really don't wanna do. See, it's folding. Yep, and that'll work just like that, which is what we want it to do. It just heated up, stretched the edge. All good, pretty cool. We're gonna go ahead and get it in the car, get the boxes in the car, and then we're gonna do the radio, which all we really have to do there is just plug it in. The radio's in. That was frustrating. Luckily they have the instructions online. We did find out you have to have the car running to program the kit properly, just in case you're doing one of these Mustangs. As you saw, the subwoofer's in. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's hop into the car. Let's take a listen. Let's do a little bit of tune. So here's the dash. So this car was already playing, as you know. It sounded pretty good, but that doesn't mean it sounded great. We're gonna try to get it to sound great. First thing up always is polarity check. Then we'll check our crossovers. Then we'll do a little EQ. You good?
Everything is right.
All right.
Oh my God.
Let me see this. Crawling into the back of this car, into that back seat, you can go up on that rear deck, or you could do yourself a favor and just come in from the back and meter it. If it meters backwards, or red, green, because the fronts are green, red, then we're all good. All right, we got red, green on both. Cool, polarity's good. Now we're gonna test our crossovers. First thing we wanna do before we do anything is go in here into the EQ settings and see what they set up. We should be okay, because this is an 8200. Shouldn't recall any of the EQ settings. Subwoofer default is off. Yeah, so we're good. It didn't retain anything. So we can turn it up. Gonna play it a little loud and see what we get. Now, without getting too deep in this, I can already tell that they have the crossover way too low and the gain's up way too high, which is real common. This is one of those things where he's been driving around with this and the sound wasn't the problem, it was everything else. Now we're gonna tune it right and hopefully it will just sound better and he'll be happier. I need to jump into the back and turn down some gains and turn up some crossovers. All right, let's try again. So the one thing you always want to check is balance and fader, right, left. And also when you're setting the crossovers, you want to make sure that the rear speakers are playing where they're supposed to and the front speakers are playing where they're supposed to. In this case, it's all four of the same speakers, but you still want to make sure. So like if you got 6x9s, you might want a little bit more bass out of them than you do out of small speakers in the front. We're going to input some subwoofer now and see what that does.
Now let me see.
All right, man, we got this thing sounding good. What do you think, Fernando?
Nice.
Let's take a look how the trunk came out with that little flap that we made. The box is back in. We went ahead and added this little strip of plastic right here. That's gonna keep that box from sliding. It's only a 1/2 inch, so all you have to do is lift the box up and you can slide it forward or back if you need to. Not like this box is gonna be easy to come out at all because you have to pull the woofers out and yeah, pain in the butt. Pull up on this guy, folds right up. There's your spare tire inflator, battery, so you can keep an eye on that. Your 2 amplifiers, and the crossovers are mounted in the back. If you need to, you can slide the box forward, and then it'll tilt up this way, and you have access to those if you ever need to check out the speakers and see what's going on there. All right, guys, there you go. There's the 911 in the Mustang. Thank you so much for watching, as always. You good?
Yep.
Got anything you want to say?
No.
Really?
On to the next one.
There you go. See you guys next time. Bye.